Thank you once again and welcome once more for today's presentation. I want to take this moment to thank Mr. Dima Emmanuel George from Nigeria, who is the executive president of Rebuild Africa Initiative. And I want to thank all the presenters and you coming from South Africa, you coming from Kenya, attending from Ghana, you attending from Nigeria, you attending from Malawi, you attending from Togo, yes, you attending from Cameroon, of course. And tonight, not forgetting Ghana, tonight I want to thank you all for having me today. I am Ku Donald Vichas, your productivity strategist from Cameroon, and I will be focusing on my topic of presentation under the theme. Remember, we are looking at the theme developing innovative waste management solution in Africa, and looking at the case study of Cameroon, I will be focusing on the topic advanced waste management strategies in Cameroon. Advanced waste management strategies, looking at the case of Cameroon. Before we move on, I want to thank you for indicating your presence, for it's not easy to be here following presentations at this hour. You must be so determined and of course looking forward to create that impact in your own nation. And why not building Africa and rebuilding Africa, like the topic goes, like the organization's name go, Rebuilding Africa. And so I'm moving to the next slide of our presentation. Mr. Emmanuel once said something that I want to quote. That was in our last presentation. He said something that was so peculiar. He said, leadership is a question begging for an answer, and that answer must improve, alleviate, and empower people to become better versions of themselves. This was a quote Mr. Emmanuel said on strategic leadership class, wherein he said this statement and it touched me so deeply. And I want to share with you a story when I attended a youth forum, a youth peace symposium, which was a national one, of course, in our nation capital, Yaoundé. This topic of creating an impact came in when a presenter had to tell us a story which I would like to share with you at the platform. The presenter said there was this young boy who found himself by the seaside, and at that seaside, this boy noticed that fishes were being pulled away from the sea and dumped by the seashore. So what this boy was doing was he set in to rescue these fishes. And what this young boy was doing was he was picking one fish after the other and throwing back into the sea. He would pick one fish, throw back into the sea, rescuing the life of each fish one step at a time. Now, something happened. What happened was that there was an elderly person, there was an old man who was grown enough, educated, saw what this young boy was doing and was like, young man, what are you doing? Why are you wasting time? Why are you wasting your energy struggling to see that, like asking him, do you think you can actually save the life of all these fishes? And the young boy looked at him for a while and picked another fish again, threw it into the sea. But sir, I just made a difference. You get the point? So the boy just rescued an extra fish. Now, what is the moral about the lesson, about the story? It is not the entire waste management control that we can actually get into it and do in such a way that we will be able, as young African leaders, to actually create that impact. But the little effort that you can do, the little impact that you can do in your own community, and of course looking at my country on my own side, like on my case study, which is Cameroon, you realize that it is not about the garbage that you see on the screen that you will carry or that will make the difference. But just like this one man taking time to make sure that he does something about with the numerous waste that he finds in his locality, goes a long way to create an impact. So as young African leaders and as a productivity strategist, I would like to encourage all of us not to actually look at the multitude or the greater impact that you get to create in your area, but the little change that you get to create. So what is waste management? Presenters, Mr. George, Mr. Ibrahim from Sierra Leone, Mr. George from Nigeria, and the presenters have been giving us beautiful definitions, and I would just want to cut it short by saying waste is that constant excess of material or useless byproducts of plants and animals. So you realize that our environment is being made of these excess products, excess materials that we find on a daily basis. So our charge for this presentation is developing innovative waste management solution in Africa, in Cameroon, in Ghana, in Tunisia, in South Africa, in your country. If I don't name your country, I beg your pardon. And the more we get to realize that the population of the world is growing at a geometric rate, leading to the increase of waste in our community, you discover that every day the reports on waste in the sea. Remember, Mr. Emmanuel made mention of this as a waste pandemic, which is actually a waste pandemic. If we don't take note of that, it will cause more harm in the near future than good. Now, let me dive straight to my case study, which is Cameroon. According to the Cameroon Hygiene and Sanitation Company, Hizakam, which is the leading waste management company, which is the leading waste control company, says that about 1.5 million tons of waste is generated every year and about 4,000 tons a day. That's 4,000 tons of waste generated a day nationwide. Remember, I said Hizakam is the leading private firm in control of waste management in Cameroon. So this waste in my country ranges from food waste, paper waste, and of course plastic. Plastic will always feature, papers will always feature, and of course waste will always feature. Like I earlier said, the previous presenters have really dive or they expatiate on how these actually become a problem in their countries, and of course being in Cameroon, bringing this will show you how critical and how dangerous and pandemic this waste issue is so alarming in Cameroon. And I believe that at the Rebuild African initiative, coming together, African youths coming together from various different countries, brainstorming on this same topic on various strategies will help us develop that innovative way, will help us develop that new idea, will help look at the way forward, and of course develop new inventions of seeing how we can cut away this excess of materials, excess of waste products, garbage, excrement, urine, rubbish from our communities, to see that with the limited resources that we have, and of course with the leadership role and the executive skills. Remember, we should be able to execute these specific goals of helping our community gain a better life, will go a long way to create that innovative impact in our community that we yearn for. Now, let me dive straight to the next slide on looking at the various challenges of waste management in my country, Cameroon. I'll just state it in point form. You have the first point, which is in that's unpredictable climate change, which has to do with floods, which has to do with droughts, you have to do with landslide. The second point is lack of local community support. Without the ability, remember Mr. Emmanuel once said, the ability for us to be build, like we must be able to build ourselves. For you to rebuild Africa, we must be able to rebuild our mental capacity. And for us to be able to do this, we'll be able to realize that if local communities really get to support, we realize that local communities actually don't support. You see in the school system, in the marketplace, in our various institutions, we don't get to support in order to see that with the various waste management institutions that are available to take care of this, they are unable to do their work. Why? Because we are not helping them, support them to make sure that this work goes each field. Another point of the that has to do with the challenges comes from low-level enforcement of regulation by the municipal authority, by the government. And with this low level of enforcement, it goes a long way to become a challenge in waste management. And another challenge, which is the fourth point, has to do with the consequences of the Anglophone crisis. Being in the Northwest, for example, I've really come to realize that with the ISACAM, which is the leading role, which is the leading firm in control of waste management, they have found it difficult to actually operate in this zone, in the northwest and the southwest zone of Cameroon. For those of you who don't know about Anglophone crisis started in 2016 with the marginalization of the Anglophone minority by the Francophone majority. That was the immediate cause. And this crisis has grown so big, so towards this end, that a lot of difficulties, especially in the domain of waste management, has been so difficult. So it has been so hard for this company, and of course they have just been so dormant, they have not been operational. And you realize that when you go to the marketplaces, in the commercial centers, you find dirt littered here and there, you find garbage, you find waste here and there. So it's so difficult, it's so hard as a result of the Anglophone crisis. You equally have the fifth point that has to do with limited resources to set up recycling infrastructures. Mr. Ibrahim Conte from Sierra Leone had to really expatiate on these recycling structures, which I will not really dive deep into it or detail into it, but the limited resources to set up these recycling structures has been so challenging. Now to the next point on my presentation, which is where I really the focus has to do with how waste management can actually be resolved in Cameroon, how waste management can be improved by youth of my country, Cameroon. The first point that we shall be looking at, dear African leaders, is spreading awareness. Spreading awareness. This comes from the point that I made mention of lack of community support. When you realize that growing in the community without the awareness of actually dumping waste in a very mannered way, selecting waste, making sure that you get to renovate the waste, you can actually select those that can be used as manure, you send it back to the farms, and those which cannot be used as manure, you actually deposit it in a way that, or you renovate it in a way that can be renewed in other dimension, as energy, as light, as manure, as why not renewable resources like this picture we have here. These are plastic containers that somebody has carefully renewed into a flower jar. Why can't we produce this and we promote it in our churches, in our schools? Why not even in our houses? It will go a long way to help us create that suitable environment, that conducive environment, instead of making it looking so dirty like we saw in our like we see on a daily basis in our various communities. So it is very important to use the media such as the TV, such as this platform. If you are here, it means that you as an African youth leader, you desire to create an impact in your community in the domain of waste management. It becomes so important to use the TV stations, the radio stations, the magazines, and why not the institutions. You can have schools, you can have churches, you can have the communities such as the marketplaces, you can have various meetings. We can be able to, as youth leaders, to constantly help these communities by spreading the awareness, educating them, helping them to understand that using waste renewably can serve as a source of income, can better the community, can create a new environment. The second point on our strategic waste management or methods of creating waste management. Remember, focus on advanced waste management strategies, focus in the Cameroonian context. You can be able to build that efficient workflow. It is amazing. Like the second point, build an efficient workflow. Here you get to realize that it is amazing in minimizing the operational delays. When I talk of operational delays, it has to do with, remember I talked about the Anglophone crisis being a limit to the waste management firm, which is the ISACAM, who are the sole waste management control providers, the sole waste management firm in Cameroon. They actually, the Anglophone crisis actually grounded their activities. Now, what the community should be able to do in order to advance waste management as a strategy in the community is to help control the operational delays by actually collecting continuously on a relative base dirt, waste from the community and depositing it appropriately. This is where you find waste such as iron being used to reform other renewable resources. You can actually specialize, like in this picture, on creating flower beds, flower jars using waste. I remember Mr. Emmanuel was making use of using tires to produce shoes, using tires to produce rubbers, using tires to produce incredible waste management tools. So with this picture, you would realize that these are containers, these are tires being used to renew the environment and making it appropriately. So with this, you can be able to invest. The second point, you invest in recycling infrastructure. With this point, I will talk on the point that if you are able to focus on renewing investing in the infrastructural development, you realize that the more you get to have the lack of sustainable funds, youth who lack sustainable funds, who are not able to raise what it takes to start up a renewable management company, you can actually partner with those who are available. Like in my community, you have youths who are able to actually start up the production of graters. You would see youths who can actually pick bottles, waste bottles, and they get to sell to these guys who produce locally made oil, locally made soap. So realize that with these advanced waste management strategies, you get to produce bags, you get to renew bags, you get to renew toilets, tissues. You get to see that with the papers that schools dumped every year, it can be used to renew and form, of course, toilet tissues. And moving on to other forms of renewables. One thing that I want to emphasize, dear youth, is that for you to be able to create an impact, you should be able to focus on one area. You can focus on how to produce shoes, how to renew shoes, how to renew tires, how to renew bottles, how to renew waste. Of course, we are talking about waste, right? How to renew waste food, garbage. So the more you get to specialize in these areas, you realize that it becomes so important. It's like I skipped one slide on my presentation. I will quickly go back there. Yes, spreading awareness. We talked of spreading awareness. The second point was building an effective workflow, where we talked of the situations where the cleaning company does not actually take off, or the persons taking care of waste does not actually come to collect on time. What do? So we actually saw the last point on investing in recycling. I will not talk much on recycling because previous presenters actually talked detailedly on this, but for us to be able to do this, I want to charge youth leaders to partner with these companies, or partner with those who are actually involved into waste management. And of course, being in Cameroon as a youth leader, youths of Cameroon should be able to actually use this strategy in order to recycle waste. Remember, you must not solve everything, but creating that little impact will actually help others to see that it goes a long way to create that impact. Thank you so much for conclusively. With the increase of youthful population in my country, for example, the youthful population is growing at an alarming age, and developing innovative waste management solutions in Cameroon in particular, and in Africa in general, becomes a collective effort of everyone, leading to the creation of a sustainable environment. Remember, it's of the goal of the United Nations Sustainable Goal of 2030 or 20 long-term development goal, to see that the environment is set free, the environment is renewable energy, to make sure that the environment experience the green. In my country, you talk of the green environment. So you realize that with this creation, or it will lead to creation of employments of youth, and why not creation of wealth. I remember Mr. Conte Ibrahim Conte in his presentation talked of waste to wealth. So young African leaders can actually create waste to wealth using the right strategies. And of course, these strategies that I've brought in, it's not really all that you need. We talk of e-waste. There are many ways. So thank you so much for following. This presentation was brought to you by Cook Donald Vichas from Productivity Strategies from Cameroon. Thank you for following from Nigeria. I can see you indicating from Sierra Leone. Thank you for following from Kenya. Thank you for following from Ghana. And of course, thank you for following from Malawi. And I believe that together, it can only become better if we put our hands together as young African leaders to make sure that we get to build our continent one day at a time. And why not rebuilding it? Of course, it has been built. So if we can rebuild it, remember, Mr. Emmanuel will say the rebuilding will start from building your mindset, building your mental capacity. And of course, with this, we'll be able to have that free environment, that free ocean, that free garbage zone, wherein plastic will not be littered here and there, wherein garbage will not be littered here and there, especially when you have floods, especially when this will always lead to so dangerous diseases. And of course, when we get to focus on this, we'll always create an environment conducive for living. Thank you so much for having me once again. Remember, you are just unlimited. Cool Donald Vichas from Cameroon, signing off for today's presentation.